Hey guys, we have arrived at Circe. Usually this is seen as the most conflict and climactic moment of the book when Bloom and Steven have finally met each other and they're interacting, and there's just going to be a lot of things going on in this episode that are very unusual. You thought maybe Oxen of the Sun was kind of funny and weird and bizarre. This one, I think, maybe even more so. It's not going to be done in different styles. It's just one style, the style of a play too, which is a bit unusual. I think I've mentioned before, though, it's more of a closet drama, which means that it's not a play that really is intended to be performed on a stage, although it has been done that way and elements have been incorporated in the movie versions of Ulysses. I think, though, it is mainly meant to be played in your mind, and there's going to be some really funny and we'll see some elements that would be very difficult to include on a stage. Anyways, I think you're going to like it. It has a lot of different styles, and not styles in the sense that Oxen of the Sun had different pastiches. It's not like that. There's one general kind of tone of voice throughout the thing, but different. There's going to be like elements that are very funny. There's going to be elements that are a bit spooky, and I don't mean like spooky in the sense that kind of like when Haynes appeared from that sliding panel in the hospital. It's not like that. It's going to be elements that are just going to be really almost scary. Don't read this too late at night. After Joyce wrote this episode, and when he was getting the book prepared for the final publication of the novel, he went back to those earlier episodes that had been serialized in the little review. He made a lot of changes. He added a lot of details so that when the characters and the incidents finally arrive in this episode, they're going to be like breadcrumbs that he's been leading the way up to all along. And this is, I think, referring to that term we've heard a lot, retrospective arrangement. Joyce wanted to make sure that it was all building to something. So he's not going to be rewriting the earlier episodes. They're pretty much the same, but he's going to be adding little clues and hints along the way so that when you finally arrive here, you're going to see, aha, almost every character, every kind of motif and little nuance that Joyce has trickled throughout the book is going to be showing up here again. That's pretty impressive, but he's got 180 pages or so to do it, and I think it's pretty. Every time I read this episode, particularly, it's different to me. Like sometimes I don't really enjoy it. This time I did enjoy it a lot. I think it's because I've done so much research and trawling all the previous episodes that I've noticed so many little details, from the charming soubrette reference in Wandering Rocks to all the little differences in Macintosh that we've seen along the way. All these other little clues and hints and puzzles that Joyce has included in his story, they are suddenly like in neon this time reading Ulysses. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it as well. We've mentioned Circe several times in the book because a lot of the other episodes in the Odyssey originally take place after Odysseus' encounter with Circe. Joyce, as I've mentioned before, jumbles and mixes the episodes. He's a very non-linear dude. But let's look at what happened in the Odyssey with Circe. Long story short, another island Odysseus and his crew arrive at, and Odysseus sends some of his men to explore the island. They find this witch woman, Circe, and she turns his men into pigs. I want to say, it's been a while. I probably should have researched this, but I'm just trying to give you the gist of the important ideas. This witch woman, she turns his men into pigs. I think one of them goes back and tells Odysseus. But anyways, when Odysseus encounters Circe, as he's on his way, he gets a little help from Hermes, the messenger god, and he gives Odysseus this it's a flower herb, Moly, and it helps Odysseus so that he can't be turned into a pig like his men. So that when he gets to Circe, basically what it means is he can subdue her and not be imprisoned or turned into a pig or otherwise harmed by her. So she kind of relents and say, okay, you won, and they kind of become friends, and they end up staying, him and his crew, she restores them to humanity, and they stay on the island and kind of just party and hang out for a year. Odysseus sleeps with Circe, not very faithful to Penelope back in Ithaca. He gets also some hints, some advice about, because she's a witch, she can kind of look in the future and see the challenges that he's going to be facing, such as skill in Charybdis, what other challenges? I don't know, wandering rocks, things like that. Things that he could or may encounter along the way. He gets some hints about that. So that's who Circe is. She's this witch. Now, how is that relevant in this episode with Bloom and Stephen? They're going to be encountering this woman, Bella Cohen, in this brothel. She runs the brothel as the mistress of the brothel, and she's going to do some witchery of her own. She's really going to put Stephen and Bloom, both of them, through their paces. They're going to be facing all their inner demons, be it for Bloom, his father's suicide, his son Rudy's death, his wife's Molly's infidelities, all these things, along with all these other things we're going to learn about Bloom, about his youth growing up, and all the things that he's faced along the way, his quote-unquote Jewishness. And then Stephen, he's going to be facing his own challenges. He's going to be, his issues about being an artist and trying to survive and avoid poverty, his estrangement from his father, from his family, and also his dead mother, her ghost is going to be haunting him. All this and more we're going to see along the way. So Circe, Bella Cohen, in the form of this brothel mistress, and all these other prostitutes, they're going to be there along the way. And other people too, we'll see, are going to be really, this is very a taxing episode for our two main characters. But along the way, after they overcome their issues, maybe they're going to get something from this experience, kind of like Circe giving Odysseus some clues and something to help him on his voyage along the way. Maybe Bloom and Stephen will be a little stronger for the experience. Who knows? There are going to be a lot of things in this episode that are in the realm of fantasy or hallucination, however you might call it. And how do we account for this? Why is this happening? Bloom, now this is slightly ambiguous, like much that Joyce loves ambiguity, but it is slightly ambiguous. But I think, for my part, that Bloom is sober, that he has not had any drinks. You can go back and read Oxen of the Sun. Maybe you might see it as him having a drink or here or there, or later references, we'll talk about that. But I think he's totally sober, for the most part pretty sober. So how is this happening? Why is he having all these visions and fantasies, seeing people that aren't there and from his past that may not even be alive? Things are talking, inanimate objects are talking. Why is this happening? Nabokov tries to explain this by saying that the text is dreaming. The text is dreaming. What does that mean? I think that's I don't think that makes sense. That just doesn't, it seems pointless. Why are we saying the text is dreaming? My explanation, and see if you can buy into this, we've had throughout the book these stream of consciousness, interior monologues of Bloom all along the way. Other characters too, but Bloom has by far gotten the most, and they have been approximations of his thoughts, his inner life. In this episode, I think we're getting a different kind of approximation of his inner life that includes visions, that includes music, that includes voices from the past. So Bloom, he's going to be seeing things and people. He knows that they're not really there. He knows that this is him in his mind replaying incidents from the past, arguing with people that exist inside his mind as parts of his personality, his father, his mother, people throughout his life and throughout this day. They're going to be remixed. All the things are going to be dredged up. And that is, I think, Joyce trying to show how our minds work, that we're constantly interacting both with the outer world, reflecting within us and bouncing off our memories and our expectations and our visions of the future. So all these things are constantly interacting as like a very fluid, dreamlike state. Joyce is trying to show that it's not meant to be seen as Joyce, as Bloom having like hallucinations or drunkenly experiences. Stephen, when we get to his part, yeah, he's pretty drunk, he's pretty messed up, and yeah, we can probably say that a lot of that is his drunken state, but not entirely. I think Bloom has the equivalent, so Stephen would perhaps be having something similar even if he was sober. It's just that time of night when most of these characters are drunk to some degree. But that's my explanation. See if you can go along with it. Just understand that for the most part, Bloom is aware what is happening in the exterior world, and when he launches into these sometimes like 15, 20 page fantasies and then pick up at the end of that 20 pages as if no time has passed, because it's been an explosion of his memories, his experiences. That's what I see is going on here. It's one more approximation of the inner life that we all have. Maybe Bloom is also just really good at getting a contact high off of all these other characters who have been drinking. And I was thinking about that line, I forget who said it. They were talking about Bloom and they go, he's got a touch of the artist about him. I think it was Lenehan and I can't remember who else it was, some other dude. Anyways, they said that, and I think the artist, he is exploring these realms within the mind, the possibilities and the remixing and the reinvigorating and messing with the past and the fantasies into the future and alternate possibilities of what might have been. That's what the artist does. He explores these worlds. And is Stephen, like these visions, just because they're not happening, even if you know they're happening only in your head, that doesn't lessen the emotional impact of them. And for Stephen, as an artist, is he going to be willing to explore these worlds as I'm sure as Joyce has done in writing Ulysses, having to re-explore all these parts about his youth and his past and all these people that he hasn't encountered for years or even decades. Being willing to do that is what the artist has to do. So for Stephen, he's going to have to do this for years ahead of him, and I think that's part of the challenge of what the artist has to do. Consider too, what we know of Bloom is all taken from this day, June 16th, 1904. And it's tempting to say, we know Bloom, we've been following him for hundreds of pages, but consider that this is the day that he knows Moly is having this affair. So how does that affect his behavior throughout the entire day, his thoughts through the entire day? Is this a normal performance of Bloom's personality, or how well do we really know Bloom? Maybe, before Rudy died, for example, that was a different Bloom, and before a lot of things, before today, this day, which he knows Moly is having this affair with Blazes Boylan, maybe that's a different Bloom too, that he'll never be quite the same after this again. So all these characters are always in transition, but this is a very pivotal day for Bloom, certainly. And how well do we really know Bloom? I don't find this episode style too difficult to read. I hope you don't either, especially after all the different lenses of Oxen of the Sun. This is not, it's not like as easy as like Charles Dickens, but it's just Joyce being Joyce. So I think you can handle it for the most part, and having it written as a play maybe make it a little easier.